What if I told you that you're not alone? I felt this way for quite some time. And people my age are beginning to feel the same way. And maybe they have for a while. Um, but people are finally comfortable enough to talk about it. Um, it's almost like Thanksgiving, and your Uncle Ronnie got arrested for the 15th time for a DUI. Everybody knows it, but we all just pretend that everything is okay with Ronnie. Um, we just don't talk about it. But I think things have gotten strange enough, bad enough, um, that we're starting to discuss it. Uh, we're talking about the elephant in the room. And it's this daunting feeling of we're all just waiting. We're waiting for something. We don't know what that is. We don't know when it is or what's coming. We just feel like all we're doing is waiting. And I got thinking about it, and I really wrestled with it for a long time, but I think I have an idea how we got here. I think our generation experiencing trauma after trauma, first in a lifetime event after first in a lifetime event, we've been programmed to just wait for the next thing, the next bad thing, whatever that is. And I think when somebody's nervous system is in overdrive for this long, it's no longer a reactive approach, but rather a proactive one. I think what we're experiencing is burnout, to a level that has never been seen. We're expecting things to continue getting worse. It's really led us to a point where there's nothing else to do besides wait. Wait for the next travesty, wait for the next cruelty, wait for the next bit of bad news. And I think what I've found is there's really no clean-cut answer to how we deal with this. I think the first step is acknowledging. We're all starting to discuss and realize that there's something very wrong that's going on today. And we talk about all the problems, the housing market, the job market being replaced by AI. Sure, we could talk about these things, but this is something that's a level deeper that I don't think we get to dive deep enough to understand. We just know something's wrong. We can feel it, much like an animal can feel when a natural disaster is coming. And I think, in a way, just as we follow all the animals that are running away from the danger, we should follow each other. Those that are early, those that are what I call in the millennial waiting room. We're all collectively just waiting for whatever this next thing is that's coming. They're the indicators. They're the ones that are the most sensitive to what is coming. They're most sensitive to the changes, the abrupt changes that everybody's going through. And I really think that we need to listen to them. Uh, and I hate to say this isn't going to get better. To understand why it's not going to get better, you have to understand the dynamic of who is in control. And to help you understand that dynamic, I want to take you back to maybe when you were a kid. Maybe this is relatable. You know, it's early in the morning, you wake up, your dad's doing something on the car or working on something in the house, and he says, "Hey, get over here and hold the flashlight." And as you're holding the flashlight and your father's trying to do whatever he's doing, he gets mad and he yells at you because you're not holding the flashlight where he told you to, even though you're like, "I'm positive this is what he told me to do." It was never about the flashlight. He was frustrated that he could not fix easily whatever he was working on. And in turn, instead of saying, "This is frustrating me," he found the next easiest thing to blame that was external. Instead of saying, "This is an issue with my skill set or my abilities," it was easier to blame the external. "Oh, I can't do it because you are not doing this right." To put it into perspective, these are the people that are in control of the world today. These are people that do not have the ability to self-reflect. They do not have the ability to hold themselves accountable, to be held accountable. And because of this, we're inheriting, or living through rather, I don't even know if we'll get to the point of inheritance, this nightmare, this dystopian insanity that we call life today. You know, these are the people that lived through one of the greatest prosperous times in America, and they will be the first generation to not pass that forward onto the next generation. You can see this in the fact that boomers make up 20-ish% of the population, but own over 53% of the home equity in America today. What are they doing with those houses? Well, they're renting them out at costs and levels that is absolutely unattainable for the average millennial or Gen Zer to afford. Because of this, they've not only inherently made the selfish decision to hoard the wealth, but they've also made your executive decision on whether you are going to have a family or not. Are you going to have children? And the answer for many is no. They can't afford the cost of living, especially when it comes to the cost of raising a child. They can't afford the extra room. And it's, for the first time in history, led us to a point that we may actually go extinct by a self-inflicted wound. This isn't an extravagant meteorite or asteroid. This isn't a nuclear holocaust. It's simply a fizzle out. The economy, usually, as history has told us, when economies get to this point, usually society collapses. we are living through an economy that has been well past dead, but we're just pretending it's okay. We're pretending it's manageable. And it's not. So, aside from the waiting, the one thing that I'll say is our generation is incredibly resilient. And not by will, by force. From school age, watching the Twin Towers fall, the first thing that our parents' generation did was rolled in a big box to share the news on the screen. Many of us were so young at that point that we didn't understand what was going on. And they forced us to watch the news as thousands of people were jumping from these high-rise buildings attempting to escape a fire, because in their eyes, jumping out of a window was a better decision than being burnt alive. When you put that into perspective now as an adult, you realize how insane that is, to show school-age children these things. And I think from a very young age, seeing things like that, the first time in 200 years of being a country, it would have been 220 something, that was a first in a lifetime event, first of many that our generation would experience. And from there, we experienced housing crisis, 2008, mass division, political division that's only gotten worse, more market corrections than anybody's ever seen, and a failing economy. And then as you are getting old enough to join the workforce, you are told that you will pay Social Security. And Social Security is meant to take care of the boomers, because boomers realized that pensions were very expensive on companies, and unanimously agreed that they would be the last generation to ever get a pension. So what does all this mean? How are millennials, Gen X, reacting? And to the credit of Gen X, they're the first to really jump into this minimalist lifestyle. But millennials no longer care so much about stuff. They don't care about status. They don't care about what vehicle they drive. They don't care about what phone they have or what shoes that they have or what they own or don't own, their salary. They're letting go. And I think people underestimate how beneficial, but also how big of a statement that actually is. The one thing I noticed is people in my life that are from that boomer generation, they're very materialistic. They care about the size of their house. They want a 4 or 5 bedroom home to retire in, even though all the kids moved out and have gone no contact with them. Um, there's no grandkids to stay there because, again, their children have gone no contact with them. So instead, they buy up all the homes and they start Airbnbs and rent for extravagant amounts of money to extract more wealth from the generation that's already paying for a federal system that they will never get to see any benefit from. Social Security will not exist by the time you and I are ready to retire. It won't exist. We've been told that. We know that the age of retirement has been raised for our generation multiple times for us to continue working, to keep contributing to the system, but to also not be able to extract any of that wealth from the system. They're guaranteeing that you and I will not benefit from a system that we carried on our backs. Understand that. So for those of you that are running the rat race every day, you're stressed, you're doing 15 people's jobs now, you're trying to make sure that you're not replaced by AI, you're so stressed you can't sleep, can't eat, don't. I know. It sounds so simple. And I don't mean to water it down to make it sound like it's easy. It's not. It's not meant to be. It's a different type of difficulty. You did all the right things. The world the way it is today is not your fault. You went to college. You listened to your parents. You graduated. You were top of your class, 4.0 GPA. And then you graduated into a market that is offering you $15 an hour and requiring you to have 3 years of experience in the field that you graduated in. How? That's the question we all ask ourselves, is how. The math just doesn't work. And that's not your fault. The price of college, back then, for a good school, converted to buying power today, was about $8,000 a year. You could work a summer job to be able to pay for that. Today, with room and board and all of that, on average $55,000 a year. With wages that are designed to make sure that you can never pay off that student loan. So this generation had affordable schooling. And I have friends that we graduated and we all made our choices, And one friend in particular was told by his father that if you don't go to college, I'm kicking you out. And so he did. He graduated with $240,000 of debt in an industry that all but no longer exists because of automation and AI. Then Jeff, our mutual friend, told his father, I'm not going to college. I don't want the debt. He seen the writing on the wall that federal loans, FAFSA, cannot be expunged or gotten rid of using any form of bankruptcy because it's a federally backed loan. He said, absolutely not. So our friend that went to college has been struggling with home insecurity, housing insecurity for most of our adult life. Student loans in default, garnishments. And Jeff is a certified electrician working in a union, owns a house, has a family. But he started off the same way. Lived in his car, went to trade school. Trade school at the time was about 10 grand. Put himself through trade school. Ryan listened to his dad, who's no longer with us. And Jeff didn't. The difference is Ryan is still paying for the decisions that were made under pressure well beyond when his father passed away. And he will be. If you didn't know, federal loans have compounding interest. His balance has not moved. It's going to be a lifelong debt. One that, if he did have children, could very well follow them for generations to come. It's a multi-generational debt. In a similar fashion, I also did not go to college. And here's where it gets interesting. Okay. I went into utility engineering. I made as much money as Jeff did, with no college degree, working with my hands. And the part that gets me is the generation that was supposed to look out for us, just as their parents did, the silent generation, the sacrifices that they made. We're actually the ones that pulled the rug out from under us. There's not enough tradesmen. You know, for the rate that boomers are retiring from the trades, there's not enough tradesmen. However, there's a whole lot of computer programmers, business professionals with degrees that cannot serve them. The return on investment is essentially net zero at this point. And they were made this way by boomers. So essentially they left you an ultimatum. And if you weren't like Jeff and I and take the latter, you were left with this potentially multi-generational commitment, well after that generation is no longer here. And I think this is the most important takeaway from all of this. Never let somebody that does not have to contribute to the penitence of whatever consequence of your action dictate what your life choices are going to be. Life got better. I won't say successful in what we determine success as today, but it got better in terms of happier, more content. You know, when I was younger, I may have agreed with the sentiment that you want to make as much money as you can, take the overtime, take the weekends, cancel your plans. As I got older, I realized that time is the most valuable currency that we have. Back then, find what you can live on comfortably for the least amount of time contributed. And I really attribute that to having kids at a young age. That the time that you can spend with your children is much more valuable than the time that you can spend at work. And that's just the truth. For those that haven't gotten to the point yet, if you are still very attached to your status, still very attached to stuff, you're gonna have a really bad time. I'm just gonna be honest. You're gonna have a very bad time. The people that bought houses working at a gas station with a single income, mind you, that generation up until the 1980s did not have to have a credit check. Those didn't exist. Have put forth more hurdles and obstacles than any generation before them. You need to realize that. Again, the way the world is today is not your fault. You did all the right things that you thought that you were supposed to do, that you were told to do. You were sold a lie. And that's not your fault. Becoming minimalist doesn't just mean a tiny house and collecting rainwater. It is an act of defiance. It's refusing to buy a 2026 vehicle that's got several monitoring features so the government can watch you and make sure that you're okay to drive and all of these things. Drive the 1994 Honda Civic with 300,000 miles that has a slight oil leak. Keep driving it. Be content with an old phone. You don't need the newest clothes for this season. Become content. That's what I'm saying. Buy secondhand. Somebody else might have something that you want, like a computer or a secondhand vehicle. That money's going directly into the pockets of another person, not a company, not a dealership, not Palantir, not the government. Grow a garden. Victory gardens during the Great Depression um, fed most of America, believe it or not. Community gardens. Learn to hunt, fish, forage. Every year, as we get through spring and muscadines start to grow, my favorite thing to do is to take the kids out into the woods. We find muscadines and we save them for lunch, turn it into jam. But we save the seeds and we plant them. Muscadines, if you didn't know, is a grape. They're all over Florida. They're native. Get in nature. Don't worry about what time it is. Leave your phone in the car. Go into nature. Go for a walk. Go to the beach. Do it during a time where you have no commitments, where you don't have to worry about having to be home at a certain time or to go do this at a certain time. And restrict access. Be a little bit more reserved with your decisions, and who that you inform on what decisions that you're making. That goes into not allowing somebody's opinion to dictate any realm of what you're going to do when they don't have to pay the consequence of a bad decision. If they're not paying for it, they don't get to dictate your choice. But again, we feel like we're in a waiting room, just collectively waiting, because there's nothing else for us to attain. Home ownership was taken from us. Vehicle ownership is unattainable or unaffordable. Assets are unattainable or unaffordable. Food is becoming unattainable and unaffordable. For many, the ability to start a family is unattainable and unaffordable. So we just wait. And everything feels strange and weird, because there's no value in what we do in the workforce anymore, just to barely survive. We're working to spend every last dollar that we have to just barely pay all the bills or almost all the bills, and then you have to go work a second or third shift, in hustle culture, doing DoorDash or whatever it is. There's no reward for participating anymore. And when you withdraw your permission or your participation, it's powerful.